This is All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. We want to make sure you don't miss your last chance to see one of your favorite plays this year, and you can do so without leaving your house. The off-Broadway hit The Unknown will be streaming Friday, April 10th at 8 p.m., Saturday, April 11th at 2 p.m., Saturday, April 11th at 8 p.m., and Sunday, April 12th at 3 p.m. from the League of Live Stream Theater. Sean Hayes plays 11 different characters in a unique one-man thriller. The main character is Elliott, a successful playwright and lyricist who is struggling with writer's block. But when a stalker turns up in his life, Elliott's fears quickly turn into curiosity. Maybe now I'll have something to write about, but at what cost? The Unknown was written by David Cale, who has been creating acclaimed solo shows for decades. It was directed by Leigh Silverman. It was nominated for a Lucille Lortel Award for Outstanding Solo Show. So ahead of its final run this weekend, we're revisiting my conversation with all three of them, who joined me in studio last month to talk about the play. I started by asking Sean Hayes what he learned about doing a solo show that he didn't know before doing it.
I'll let you answer that, because you know what I'm going to say.
What?
That I'll never do it again. What do I know now about doing a solo play? Well, what it takes to do it.
Yeah.
My God. The story goes, when Leigh and I have been friends for a long time, and we've been looking for something to do together. And she says, I think I found something. And I said, if it's a solo play, I don't want to do it. And she said, well, it's a solo play. So, and she sent me the first 11 pages of the script that David wrote, and I just thought it was incredible. And I was like, I want to read more. And so it's almost one of those things where I can't not do it. It's incredibly well written, obviously incredibly well directed. And the whole team that Leigh put together is top notch. And I just, I thought I'd be a fool to pass this up.
So you're persuasively.
Professionally persuasive, yes.
When you've directed solo shows before,
Yeah.
and when you have one actor on stage, what are the biggest challenges working with one actor, especially one who plays 11 different characters?
I think the thing about one person is that they have to hypnotize, entrance, charm, surprise, delight. They have to earn the trust of the audience right away. They have to take them on a ride. And I think as I considered what was tricky about The Unknown, I thought we really need someone who can hold multiple truths, who we can trust, who will make us laugh, and ultimately will take us just kind of on the ride of our life. And
then when they couldn't find that person, Leigh.
That's right. Then I called Sean. I was like, please. I think one of the amazing things about David's writing is that he really puts the audience in a kind of spell. Like people leave their bodies. That's the experience that the audience is having. Certainly that was my experience with Harry Clark that David and I first did together, and with Sandra. And when I've watched David perform his material himself, it's just this incredible experience. And what I love about the solo form in general is the way that it requires audience participation. It requires the audience to collaborate with the performer to go on that ride.
David, you've been on our show, I think, since the earliest days of our show.
Yes.
What keeps you writing and performing solo work?
I don't know. I really don't know. I mean, I've thought about it recently because I have, I think, 13 solo shows.
Yeah.
So I keep coming back to it. I don't know. And I'm not, yes. So I'm really not sure. I mean, I do other things, but I keep coming back to the solo. I mean, they're very expressive for me. And they're, all of them have aspects that are very personal. I used to think of myself as like a singer-songwriter that who instead of making albums, I made shows. And they were often an assemblage of 10 or 12 monologues, almost like an album. But now they've kind of shifted their form because they're driven by one character, and then the actor plays everybody else around the lead character. So, but I'm not sure why I keep coming back to it, but I do.
That's interesting. That's interesting, David, that you say they're like albums, because when people say, Sean, how do you go about memorizing an entire hour or 70, 75 minute show, whatever it is. And I always say, David, it's like everybody has a favorite album. They
Yeah.
memorize
Right.
they memorize every word to every song on that album.
Yeah.
Kind of the same thing.
And then also because I'm so influenced by movies that they're pretty cinematic, all of them. I can see them, and I often will walk the script around town to make sure the locations are accurate if they're in New York City, or with my show Blue Cowboy that took place in Idaho, in Ketchum, Idaho. I'll basically walk it. Same with Harry Clark. That every location has got to be accurate. So if the audience hopefully is also visualizing it as the narrator is telling it, that that it's accurate. Like if people know that restaurant that we're talking about, or they know Julius's that takes where two of the scenes take place in the unknown. It's not going to throw them off by thinking, I've been to Julius's, and that's not what Julius is like. So I go round, I check.
Sure.
So I don't want anything to throw it off.
Leigh, there's a really sort of exciting sound in this play. It also adds to the thrillerness of this play. How did you experiment with how the sound and how the audience would experience the sound, especially in the beginning?
Yeah, I had the great fortune of working with Isabel Waller-Bridge, who did the compositions for the show, and Caroline Eng, who was our incredible sound designer. And I would say to Caroline, I just want to move the air in the room. I just want to move air and not let people really know that it's happening, to sort of create a sense of like just on the edge of what you can hear, that sense of unease in the room, that sense of tension, and then let something come into consciousness and then drop away. And she just really leaned into that thriller feeling. And I think there's just an ongoing soundscape throughout the show that I find just so incredible, because I think some of it you hear, some of it you don't, some of it you just feel. There's speakers everywhere in that theater, so you really get a sense of sort of surround sound. And then really I had been using Isabel's, some of her compositions that I had just heard before I even knew her, as a kind of like mood board for myself.
Oh.
And then out of just a kind of spontaneous impulse, I was like, maybe she'd want to work on this show. And then we reached out to her. She got totally excited about it, and then ended up writing music for us, which was just such an incredible opportunity and new collaboration for me. And I just think her music captures the spirit. I mean, it just like goes right to your sternum.
Yeah.
So it just has been that amazing collaboration with her and Caroline, I think really solidifies kind of the foundation of this thriller vibe that we have going on there.
And is she related to Phoebe Waller-Bridge?
Sister.
Yeah.
There you go. Sean, it's kind of an intimate theater. Do you get a sense of when the audience is feeling a little scared or?
I think, for sure. You know, again, it's so brilliantly written that David put the first scare on page 1, which is there's someone singing outside of your house. That happens on page 1. And you're like, wait, what? Something, and that's when the audience, they kind of chuckle, because just a little chuckles here and there, because they're like, oh wait, am I going on this ride already? You know?
Yeah.
And so it sucks you in immediately. It's so smart.
My guests are actor Sean Hayes, playwright David Cale, and director Leigh Silverman. We're talking about their new show, The Unknown, which is a one-man thriller about a playwright and his relationship with a stalker. It's running at Studio Seaview now through April 12th. When we first meet Elliott, Sean, he's got serious writer's block.
Yeah.
Why is he struggling?
The actor or the character?
The character.
Elliott is struggling. Why is he struggling with writer's block? Well, he's a pretty well-known writer, as his best friend Larry says, but he has hit this stump because I don't know, David. Why is he?
It just all dried up, and he's become dependent upon his writing. It's how he makes a living.
Right.
And he's also he doesn't really know how to do anything else, or doesn't have qualifications, and he's not 19 that he can sort of work
Right.
into another profession.
Right.
It's like you got to make this work. But
Yeah,
the
so
ideas have stopped.
Right. Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing. Yeah. So it's one of those things that happens to any writer who's makes their living from writing, is they eventually reach a point where they actually do have a real thing called writer's block, and you're meeting Elliott in the moment that he has that.
Have you ever had that happen to you, David?
Not yet.
Okay,
I'm
not good.
hoping this show
Not good. Not good.
hoping this isn't going to foreshadow my life.
But I think also the problem of the play is that Elliott has writer's block. That is sort of where we meet Elliott. And that is the problem of the play. And I think actually part of what happens in the play is that we start to uncover why.
Yes.
And it becomes sort of the catalyzing force for why Elliott engages in this cat and mouse game with this this other character. But I think that what the play is really about is what and why he's blocked. And
Yeah.
that's also one of the twists, I think, that comes up over the course of the play.
Well, it shows the challenges of being in a creative field and wanting to be on top in a creative field and what you have to go through to be on top in a
Yeah,
creative
Right.
field.
Yes.
yeah.
Right?
And it's also because I think if to maintain any kind of career in the arts in whatever form, you have to be kind of obsessive about it, and then you get defined by it. But then when you can't, like Elliott can't write anymore, it's your whole who am I rears its head. If you take away my work and my obsessive relationship to my career, who am I?
Yeah. What's your identity? Yeah.
Yeah.
My guests are actor Sean Hayes, playwright David Cale, and director Leigh Silverman. We're talking about their off-Broadway show, The Unknown. We'll have more after a quick break. You are listening to All of It on WNYC. I'm Allison Stewart. We've been talking about the one-man off-Broadway thriller, The Unknown, with actor Sean Hayes, playwright David Cale, and director Leigh Silverman. The show follows a playwright and his relationship with a stalker. It closes this Sunday, but there are still limited numbers of tickets available, or you can get tickets to live stream the final 4 performances. I asked playwright David Cale whether he'd ever experienced anything similar to his main character, being the object of a stranger's unwanted affection.
I did have somebody who was buzzing my door from the street at night, sometimes all night, who I caught in the end. And that definitely was, that's definitely stayed with me to the point of it's kind of prompted some of the ideas in the play.
Sean, when Elliott realizes that this person is kind of stalking him and it seems kind of obsessed with him, at one point, his fear kind of turns to intrigue.
Yeah.
What is behind his intrigue in this person who might be bad for him, but...
Well, yeah, no, well, he's the key to unlocking the writer's block, right? He's the key to Elliott's drive to know more and to feel more and to experience more is to hopefully write better and write something. It's the whole, like Leigh was saying, it's the whole crux of the play is I've latched onto something that's going to cure my writer's block, and I'll be damned if I let it go. And so that's enough to drive someone to do things they wouldn't normally do. And so when he becomes I wouldn't say obsessed, but maybe obsessed with his subject.
Yes.
He doesn't know how to stop it.
Leigh, Sean plays 11 different characters. What advice or feedback did you give him to best approach the 11 different characters on a fairly small stage?
Yeah. Sean is so versatile. He's so mercurial. He's so creative. He's so energetic. And really what we talked about was restraint. And what we talked about was how little could he do to differentiate between the characters and how still could he be. I think people know him as like a very exuberant performer and have seen him be very energetic on stage and on television. And I was really interested in showing this different side of him, both as a performer, but also to really, I think, encourage the audience to participate in the imagination piece of the show. And I think that that's less about the kind of like, I'm going to do this funny voice and then this funny voice and then this crazy guy, as opposed to that you can almost see Sean switching between characters just in the eyes, just in the very subtle way that he changes his body weight, the gentle change in his vocal quality. And this show has so many different challenges. One of them is that he plays these different characters, and then sometimes they're impersonating each other. And that is just like such a crazy, mind-twisty thing to work on, to perform, to direct, and just the appetite for that kind of nuance was something that Sean really brought into the process. And I think it's part of the delight for the audience is that you're able to see it, even though he's actually doing very little. So it's a real, to me, that's where the virtuosity comes from, not in how much, but in how little and in how specific he could be.
Yeah.
Was that difficult for you, Sean?
It wasn't. It's all difficult, but it was actually fun. It was actually fun. The rehearsal process was really fun, and Leigh got to witness and still does every day me being frustrated.
What does that look like?
You're looking at it, yeah, no. So it was exhilarating and exciting and thrilling, but also frustrating when, one of the best two things that are kind of interesting. One is. Leigh said at the beginning, she's like, imagine everything in a close-up, which made me understand that instantly. And then the other thing was, which I think is really great, is I started, you have pants with pockets in them. And so in the rehearsal process, I would putting my hand in my pockets because I didn't know what to do with them. And I would use them to play over the characters. So she had them sewn shut for the play, which was brilliant, brilliant. So I can't, even when I'm standing backstage ready for the curtain to open every night, I go to put my hands in my pocket, and I can't because they're sewn shut.
There's real directing for you. Real directing.
Sew those pockets up.
Yeah.
Yes, Miss Silverman.
But it really, really was smart. It was really, I've never experienced that before. It was like, yeah. I mean, it's one of the, obviously, the funnier things that Leigh's done. And I could bore you with the directing process by, talking your ear off. But that was just one of the kind of quirky things that I thought was really super smart of her to do. Because we all want to do that. It's just a natural thing. And I thought, never having done a solo show, I'll put my hands in my pockets for one person and take them out for another. It's like, no,
David, what impresses you most about Sean in this performance when he's going through those 11 characters?
Oh, God, he's so dazzling. I mean, I stand at the back of the house. I've seen most of the performances.
Oh, really?
And I think, I'm not going to go in tonight. I'm going to take a night off. And then I'm like, no, I'm going to go in and watch. I mean, it's such a tour de force of a performance. And it's every night. And that the audience because it's full so much of the time, well, all the times actually, but that I'm standing at the back and people are so rapt that I said to Sean the other day, it looks like, from my perspective, like I'm looking at a photograph because people are so still and people are gasping at times. And it's just exhilarating to watch.
Well, that's the thrill that I get too. I get excited. People are like, "You still excited to do the show?" I said, "I am," because I get so excited to share the story with people who are hearing it for the first time, just like when I read it for the first time. And that's what gets me really excited. Is like, can you believe this story? I mean, it's crazy. I mean, it's really so clever and thrilling and shocking and all of those things. And so I get excited for the audience to hear it.
My guests are actor Sean Hayes, playwright David Cale, and director Leigh Silverman. We're talking about their new show, The Unknown, which is a one-man thriller about a playwright and his relationship with a stalker. It's running at Studio Seaview through April 12th. There's a meta element in the show. We won't give it away. But how much were you thinking about that, Leigh, as you had to direct this show?
Oh, all the time. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the really unusual aspects. I'm trying to think about how to talk about it because I don't want to give it away.
Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
But there's, I think what I was the most interested in, sort of scenically and from a design point of view, was that you start off and you know exactly where you are. And then I kind of take you on a journey that has these little surprises here and there. And then there's a moment where you're like, wait, what is that on the stage? And then we land you at the end of the play kind of back in a more familiar space again. And yet you have a totally different understanding of it. Mm-hmm. And so kind of coming in with that understanding of how I wanted to move through the production from a design point of view, I think was very helpful. And in some ways, what Sean is doing is separate from what the set is doing, so to speak, and what the lights are doing. And I just really have to shout out our incredible lighting designer, Chaucy, who...
The lighting is amazing.
Isn't it?
It's really good.
It's incredible.
I mean,
amazing.
She's a genius. And what she is doing to change our relationship to Sean all the time, and to tell, some of those cues are very long, some of them are very short. She is painting with light in a way that is so extraordinary. And it is... and yet Sean moves very little during the course of the show, and in fact is almost completely still for like the first 18 minutes. And so there's this way in which you feel, I think, transported through light and through sound in a way that, and listening. And that's where that like amazing collaboration that I'm talking about comes in. And the conversation comes from the gasping and the relationship that people have to what they're hearing and what they're seeing. And yet if I were to ask you, like, when you saw the show, who were you picturing for that person or that person? It's probably wildly different than the people sitting on either side of you. But yet it's very, very clear. And that's like the specificity of the writing and the incredible specificity of the performing.
Yeah, one of the things that Leigh did that was so funny, you rehearse in chunks. You rehearse the first 5 pages or the first 10 pages, then you move on. And so all I wanted to do was move when we first started. I wanted to move around the stage right when the curtain opens. I just want to start walking. I wanted to pace. I wanted to talk to the audience. And she goes, "Nope, you got to stand there right there. You stand right there. You don't move." And I was like, "I don't know how to do that." So she goes, "You got to stand there right." And then one day, like after I don't know, several days or maybe even a week, she goes, "I have a special gift for you today." I go, "What?" She goes, "You get to move for the very first time today." I was like, wow, I get to actually walk across the stage after 20 minutes.
You whipped him into shape.
I know.
Yeah.
That's
love
impressive. David, as we finish up, I'm curious, what does it take to write a thriller? A thriller in 75 minutes?
I love movie thrillers. So they're definitely a big influence on me. And I always wanted to see if one person on stage could create the tension of a thriller. So I just instinctively started this story, and a large part of it was written very quickly because Sean had read like 11 pages or so, and then he wanted to know what happened next. Yeah. So it was written with such intuition that, but it's really from. I've had such a diet of movie thrillers that I'm sure that fed completely into it.
Sean, how do you create the tension of a thriller on stage?
By not playing it as a thriller.
Yeah.
It's what's happening.
It's just you play every moment as real as possible. That's it. And truly try to feel it. And that's the challenge of doing 7 shows a week, 70 performances, is keeping it fresh for yourself. But again, it's the excitement of what we all built together as a team, and the presentation of it, of the lighting, the directing, the sound, all of it. And so that's how I approach it.
That was my conversation with writer David Cale, director Leigh Silverman, and actor Sean Hayes about the acclaimed off-Broadway play called The Unknown. You can catch the last few performances this weekend at Studio Seaview or live stream the final 4 performances through April 12th.